invited that.
Do we have everyone
Okay.
who looks like they're coming in from Zoom?
Yeah, I think we're in.
Okay. Okay, so I guess we can do this story. This one has sound effects, so you know that I like it. What can I say? It's called The Magic Donkey. And I'm not going to recommend anybody do what the young woman in this story does, but it's surprising actually that this one's based on a Jewish folktale, that how many of the folktales are somebody sort of tricking someone who kind of deserves it, but that's not exactly the lesson we always want to teach. So there was a young woman named Eddie, and this takes place in the past where there were marketplaces and people rode donkeys and horses as opposed to cars. So Eddie was a young woman who was in the market. And what was she looking for? Because she was too young to be selling anything, and she didn't really own much, but she was looking for actually almost anything: a dropped coin, a forgotten orange someone left somewhere, an odd job maybe to do. Once she found a lost child, and she was rewarded with a gold coin for returning them. If you knew how to use your wits, you could always raise a little money, because Eddie's mother did not have much money, and she would do what she could possibly to be able to help feed her poor family. Especially now that the holidays were coming up, and she was hoping that they could have some special holiday food for a change. So she wasn't sure what she was going to find, because each day was kind of a new adventure. She never knew what was out there or what people might need. But all she could think of is how happy her mama would be if they could buy some special food for Shabbat this week. So Eddie's thoughts about this, because she was visualizing and imagining what that wonderful food would be, was interrupted by the sound of two men arguing. "What kind of servant are you?" said a man with ruddy cheeks, yelling. "I sent you to buy a donkey and you came back empty-handed. Can't you do anything right?" His skinny servant stood there and said, but how am I supposed to buy a donkey when there were no donkeys for sale? There was none of them at the market today. Isn't it enough? And anyway, what do you need a donkey for? Isn't it enough you kick me around? But his master was not paying any attention to what he said and still shouting at him. "Now go back to that market and don't return to the house until you find a donkey." Eddie hid herself and started thinking. While she was listening to what was going on, her brain was working, and she came up with a brilliant idea, or, well, half a brilliant idea. She ran straight to the rabbi's house and asked if she could borrow his donkey for the day. Now, the rabbi knew Eddie pretty well and knew she was probably up to something, but he said, "Okay, certainly," trying to hide the smile that was coming on his face. "What's the mysterious project this time?" "I can't tell you," she said, a little out of breath, "but I promise we'll have a good laugh about it in the end." So she took the donkey by its rope and she hurried back to the market. As soon as she spotted the skinny servant walking by, she called to him, "Donkey for sale, donkey for sale." The servant spun around and said, "Oh, I'm in luck, just what I needed. How much for the donkey, miss?" "How much money do you have?" Eddie said, trying to keep her voice steady. "The money's not mine," said the young man. "It's my master's." "Well, give me half of what you got," she said, handing him the donkey's rope. "Maybe if you get a bargain, your master won't be as cruel to you." The servant looked puzzled. "How do you know?" But the moment he paid her, Eddie smiled and ran off, so he never got to finish his question or hear her answer. What she did was she ran home and she poured the coins into her mother's lap. She was so happy she forgot that she still owed the rabbi a donkey, because remember, she borrowed the donkey. She didn't tell him she was going to sell it. But she kept saying to her mother, "Oh, we can buy wine and we can buy some cakes and stuff and things to have a wonderful Shabbat. And maybe we should even have enough left over for tzedakah." And Eddie stopped when she felt her mother's eyes looking at her very carefully. Come on, Eddie, her mother said suspiciously. Where did you get all this money? I'm no fool. I'm your mother, and you can't make a donkey out of me. Out with it, girl, tell me. Make a donkey out of you, Eddie repeated. Oh, all of a sudden, the rest of her brilliant idea floated into her brain. Oh, Mama, that's it. And without explaining, she ran out of the house, leaving her mother pretty bewildered with a lap full of money. Eddie ran till she came to that master's yard. She silently, carefully opened the gate, tiptoed in, removed the donkey's rope from around his neck, and then she returned the donkey back to the rabbi's house where she left it. Then she returned to the master's yard, and she put the donkey's rope around her neck, took a deep breath, and said, "Hee-haw!" She listened for a minute to see if anybody was coming. Then she let out another long, loud hee-haw. Just as she hoped, the master and his skinny servant came running. The master's mouth fell open. "Who are you?" he blared, his eyes looking around. Where's my donkey? Who are you? What's going on? Where's my donkey?" "Oh, kind sir," Eddie said, clasping her hands together, "I'm not really a donkey. I'm a girl." Ah, she pawed the ground with her foot just like a donkey would. "But I'm under a spell, of an evil sorcerer, and I will remain like this, sometimes a girl, sometimes a donkey, until my owner sets me free. It's the only way to break this spell." And she kicked up with her hind legs like a donkey, with him breathing again loudly, "Hee-haw! Please, sir, let me go." It was the servant who recognized her from the market and started to say, "Aren't you the girl who..." Fortunately for Eddie, his master paid no more attention to him then than he had done before. "Go, shoo," the master said. As he fumbled, he pulled the rope from Eddie's neck. "Spells, sorcerers, I want nothing to do with you. Go free, get out of here." Eddie kissed the master on both his red cheeks, hugged the servant's skinny shoulders, and galloped off, braying and laughing at the same time. "It figures you would bring home a magic donkey," the master muttered, shaking his head. "That's the last time I give you an important errand. Tomorrow I'm going to the market and buy a donkey myself." Well, as it happened, the next day, the rabbi went to the market to sell his donkey. The ruddy-faced master hurried over because he was saying, "There's a donkey," but he stopped short because he recognized the donkey. He gathered up his courage, marched up to the rabbi, and put his face close to his. "You there? You must be that evil sorcerer. I know all about you, all about the donkey and the girl and the magic spell." When he saw the rabbi's confusion, the master leaned even closer and whispered, "You won't make a fool of me again. After all, fool me once, shame on me. Shame on you, rather. Fool me twice, shame on me." And the master stalked away, his cheeks glowing with ridiculous fury and wounded pride. The rabbi felt the laughter rising in his throat. Somehow, he couldn't imagine how, but somehow, he knew that Eddie was laughing right along with him. And I hoped that at some point he was going to get that young woman and let her tell him the story of what really happened with the donkey. So that is our story for tonight. She fooled somebody, as like I said, it's not the story that you want people to necessarily learn their lesson from, but there's a lot of folk tales where people trick people who sort of semi-feel deserve it. So that is our story for this evening. And I like making donkey sounds, I admit it.
Thank you. So as we are all together here and enjoying the story that you shared and enjoying a little more time before the end of Shabbat, before we make Havdalah, we'll count the Omer. I'm not sure exactly which order it should be in, but we're going to do it in this order. And so today is the beginning of the 28th day of the Omer. Last night we counted the 27th day. So you can say the blessing with me. It's the full blessing. Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu, and then it's al sfirat ha'omer, for the counting of the Omer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of creation. You make us holy in connecting and commanding us to count the Omer. So in the this year's Color the Omer book, it suggests the Shivat Minim, the 7 different species from Israel, each represent a mystical value and mystical area to consider as well. So with the wheat, to consider strength and life, with the honey, the decency and honesty, with olives, wisdom and experience, with pomegranates, good deeds, with the grapes, with happiness, and I am missing te'ena, and I'm blanking, but of the figs is te'ena, and that is persistence. So we consider strength, persistence, wisdom, honesty and decency, happiness and good deeds as the 7 things coming from Israel for us to consider at this time in the counting of the Omer. That puts us in good stead for how to concentrate on who we want to be as we move forward. So I am going to share the blessings in the chat, so we'll be able to recite them together. And mostly we do them in the Hebrew, even though I put the English there as well, so you can know what is there. And then I will also put up Eliyahu Hanavi and Shavuot Tov for after we put out our candles. So now everything should be there. So I invite you to light your candles, those of you who are lighting this evening. I know some of you light on your own and some of you enjoy the light of those of us who are lighting, who are not near smoke detectors or other things that make it more challenging. So as the candle is now lit, begin our blessings with the wine. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. I invite you, if you'd like to unmute and join me. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen. You can take a sip of the wine or juice now or later before we finish the series of blessings. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei v'samim borei minei v'samim. I was in a program the other day preparing for Shavuot, talking about experiencing Shavuot with all of our senses and challenging us to consider smell and fragrance and what the smells might be like for Sinai and for that moment, along with the sight and our hearing and all of the other dimensions as well. Now on to the candle. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei me'orei ha'esh borei me'orei ha'esh. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh l'chor ben or l'choshen ben yom hashvi'i l'sheshet yemei hamaseh. Baruch atah Adonai hamavdil ben kodesh l'chor. As we consider the moments of sanctity and of holiness of the seventh day of the week from the 6 days of creation, and this moment of separation and leaving Shabbat, moving back into the rest of the week, as we now put our candles out in our wine or juice. I invite you to unmute and sing with me Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Imheravi Amenu, Yahweh. Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hakiladi. We wish one another a Shavua Tov, a good week. Shavua Tov, 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 a good week. A week of peace, may gladness reign, and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace, may gladness reign, and joy increase. Shavua Tov. Wish everyone a good week. Yes, and we will be back on Facebook for Havdalah next Saturday evening.